Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of STAGR Cast. I'm your host, Adam Lampson. In this episode, we sat down with Jeremy Ballantine, a renowned Northeast hunter and content creator. Jeremy is well known for his YouTube channel In Pursuit 365 that features some great Northeast content of big bucks, turkey hunts, elk hunts, and more. As a hunter, Jeremy possesses an uncanny ability to locate the biggest bucks on the mountains throughout the Northeast. Jeremy shares his wealth of knowledge and experience, guiding listeners through his process of breaking down terrain features and habitat to enhance their odds of success. He dives deep into understanding big bucks in the Berkshire Mountains of Massachusetts, exploring the rugged terrain, dense forests, and diverse food sources that create the perfect habitat for trophy bucks in the East. Listeners will gain invaluable insights into reading big tracts of timber, identifying hidden pockets of food, water, and cover, and deciphering the movement patterns and behaviors of these elusive giants. Additionally, Jeremy takes us on his thrilling journey as he recounts his unforgettable 2022 Iowa bow hunt. After applying for many years and finally drawing a tag, Jeremy takes us through his meticulously planned out trip and how he scouted areas leading to his success. He shares the challenges and rewards of the hunt, detailing the almost instant action and the harvest of a beautiful buck with his bow. This story will have you itching to take a Midwest hunting trip at some point in your life. Throughout the episode, Jeremy takes us through a collection of his most thrilling big buck stories from the past. From intense rut hunts to close encounters on the track, he paints vivid pictures of adrenaline-filled moments in the pursuit of mountain bucks. The episode is packed with wisdom and practical advice, empowering hunters of all levels to absorb and apply Jeremy's expertise to increase their odds of success in the upcoming season. Get ready to sharpen your skills with the invaluable insights shared by Jeremy. We hope you enjoy this episode, and if you want to help us out, please leave us a review on your podcast app and subscribe to the show. We greatly appreciate the support. Now let's dive into the episode. You're listening to STAGR Cast, brought to you by STAGR Gear. All right, welcome back to another episode of STAGR Cast. We are back down here with Jeremy Ballantine for a second podcast. We did one with him. It was about this time last year, I think it was, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So how's everything been going since then?
Oh, it's been going good.
Yeah.
You know, I did that Iowa trip and then came back and hammered on some local whitetails. You know.
Yep. Yeah, you had a heck of a season. You started Iowa and then smashed a couple bucks in Mass, and then just bounced around from there. But as we were just talking about it, but last year in the podcast, you were flirting around with the idea of going to Iowa and everything you were going to do with it. So why don't you hit us with that whole story, and then we'll kind of talk about some local stuff. Yeah,
Iowa was like a 5 years in the making. You know, building all the points and then finally getting drawn. So I've been looking at Onyx and figuring out access points and how I was going to hunt and everything, and everything worked out. Just got out there and got scouting, and it was some of the best whitetail ground I'd ever stepped foot on. You know, there were bucks, there was buck sign all over the place. It was tons of security cover, and I hit it right with the weather. The first few days that I was there was when we had that cold weather coming, and so I really concentrated on trying to kill a buck before that warm weather hit, and that's pretty much exactly what happened. I got a little trigger happy and shot a buck. Probably, I should have waited a little bit longer since I had time, but it was a great buck. I mean, he's mid 130s, nice mature 10-point,
perfectly symmetrical,
dark antlers, and but it was, I went about it just like I would any Western hunt, where I can just get away from people and outwork people and hike. And the spot I found, it was a 1.5 mile hike in, and real thick, and I didn't see any hunters pass like that half-mile mark. So if you can get past that half mile, either using water in a boat or just hiking, it seems like you can get away from a lot of pressure. And I had a couple pins situated on some fingers running off a private down into the public, and the public had a lot more security cover in it this year than it did previous, because it was drought conditions, so the water wasn't there. It was all high brown grass. And that morning hunt, got that stand hung up, and it was kind of an observatory, but a really good kill stand. It was on a really good finger, covered in scrapes. And first thing in the morning, man, it was cold, crisp. Everything was covered in frost. Hit the horns together, and I didn't rattle for 15 seconds. And here comes a buck running right at me. I can hear another buck coming in behind me. I think I rattled in. I saw 8 bucks that morning. I think I rattled in 3 in that one rattling sequence for 15 seconds. It was just awesome. And that 10-point came running in and started working a scrape in front of me, and he just hung out too long. He's a great buck. and shot him, and he actually ran back down the hill the same way he came from, and the other 2 bucks that I'd rattled in kind of ran the same direction. Well, this is where it gets kind of crazy. I didn't tell you about this earlier, but I get out of the stand, and I'm following the blood trail down, and I'm breaking out of like this thick, briery stuff, and gets into this dry lake bed, and it's all tall brown grass, and I'm breaking out of the briars, and there's a buck standing there, like a little 8-point, year-and-a-half-old buck at like 15 yards. And I'm just like looking at him, and he's looking at me, and he just kind of stops looking at me, and he looks back at the ground. And I'm just like, I bet you my deer. And another buck, the other smaller buck that I rattled in, was standing right there too. And he like picks his head up and looks at me. Both those bucks were playing with my dead buck.
Really?
Yeah, they were like nudging it around. It was like he was all discombobulated there in the grass, and I had to like spook them off of that deer.
Like a turkey after.
Yeah, it was just like a turkey. I was just like, what's going on here? This place is like whitetail paradise.
That's crazy.
And it was just really fun for a Vermonter to go out there and just see that many deer, and that it's just a good change of pace.
It's unbelievable going from here where you might go out for a week and not see deer, and then you go out there and it's just shit going on everywhere.
Yeah, it was just awesome. And packed everything back to the truck and put my pack frame on, walked back in, totally deboned him, and
you packed him right out?
Packed him out,
nice.
And it worked out pretty good. But it's just a fun hunt. I went and hunted a little bit in Nebraska after that because I had some time, but it got to be 70 some odd degrees. It was just the weather went terrible for the next 2 or 3 weeks. Everyone was the peak pre-rut and beginning of the rut was really warm.
Yeah.
Was that the last week of October?
Last week October, first 10 days of November were really warm.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a buddy hunting in Kansas, and it was the same thing. It was just really warm. You just wasn't seeing the mature bucks moving. Mm-hmm. So that weather kind of dragged on.
Yep. Yeah, that's crazy. I'd like to get out there one day just to see the deer activity.
Yeah.
Just
there's tons of it's it's just a matter of doing the research before you go out there.
That's a draw only state. Like if you're a non-resident, so you have to. Is it easy to get a tag in some zones versus others?
There's some zones that are less points. I think there's some you could probably get on in 3 or so. And if you went out gun season, I think it takes a lot less points.
Oh, okay.
But the archery, it took me 5 years to get a tag there.
Yep. Yeah, because they get the Orange Army that rolls out during shotgun season.
Yeah,
out there,
shotgun
right?
muzzleloader. that same zone, I think I can get a muzzleloader tag like every 2 years.
Okay, that's not too bad.
So I was thinking of going up. Maybe I'll go out late season, but we'll see. I'm just going to start building points, and then I got tons of time to plan.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you're dangerous with a muzzleloader too, right there.
Yeah. Not going to get snow to track them.
Yeah.
But it'll be it's a fun hunt regardless.
Could you even track a buck out there with the amount of deer running around? Or
no, you couldn't.
Just
no.
Too many tracks and too
just
much
like
stuff.
a barnyard.
Yeah, I don't think you could. There's too many deer. There's literally deer everywhere.
Do you think so? You always hear the people like old Vermonters and Northeastern people say like, if you can kill a deer in the Northeast, you can kill a deer anywhere. Do you see that out there with like people that go?
Oh yeah.
Versus people coming from other spots.
Well, it's just there's more deer, and just the higher deer density alone makes it better.
Yep.
And you can just get on deer. You're if you can kill them here, you're a killer out there.
Yeah. So there's just deer. Seems like they're just everywhere.
It's just a different deal. There's just a lot more deer.
Yep.
And there's a lot the amount of mature bucks running around is higher.
Yep.
So
just crazy how it's.
And out there, a good deer, he can have really good antlers on his head. 4 years old, 3 years old even. Some of the Midwestern deer, I mean, I'd be super happy shooting a 3-year-old buck out there if he's 140 inches.
Yep.
I don't care.
Not that it matters out there as much like as body weight does here, but what do those deer run for body weight out there?
I would say that buck I shot was probably 180 pounds.
It's a good buck, yeah.
Yeah, because I had just deboned meat in that pack, and that was all I wanted to carry in one trip. Mm-hmm. It was a heavy pack, so I mean it was probably pushing, I don't know, 95, 100 pounds of meat, I would say.
Yeah, 'cause you see some pictures of deer out there that are just absolute slob bodies, beefy and everything.
They got phenomenal feed.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this year there were tons of acorns out there.
So that's where all the acorns were out there this year, not here?
Yeah, we didn't have any here. They had them all out there. Same with Nebraska. When I drove to Nebraska, all those river bottoms just full of acorns.
Yep. And they got all those farm fields too. They pick soybeans and what else do they have out there as the main feed for
They
them?
got soybeans, corn.
Just eating all the time.
Yep.
All you can eat buffet for them.
Yeah, they got good food. They got the terrain's a lot more subtle. They just don't have the stress, and good soil grows good bucks. So
Yeah, it's a hard life up here.
And the private land, I think a lot of things with the Midwest is the private land is viewed totally different than it is here. Like here, people can hunt anywhere they want pretty much. And out there, if it's private, you don't walk on it.
So no signs or nothing. You can just
you do not walk on that private land out there. So I think you got a lot more spots where deer can get some age on them, and you got a lot better sanctuaries.
Yep. So everything's blocked off no matter what it is. Because I remember seeing in like one of the Hunting Public videos when they came up north to turkey hunt, and they were just, because you can go on private land if it's not posted and stuff.
Yeah.
And people in the comment section on YouTube are going off about, how are you going on private land? There's, there's people from out Midwest. It's pretty funny.
Oh yeah.
It's different.
They're blown away at the fact that you can just hunt anywhere.
Yeah.
There's no posted signs. I can just hunt there.
Yeah.
It's just like, what? You're walking on some guy's land you don't know? Yeah.
Just a whole different culture.
That's just how we grew up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're never going to change too.
Yeah. I never saw that until I went to Ohio, and it's everything's leased up. It's a different ball game out there.
Yeah.
But
all those Midwestern states, they're all getting leased up. That's really what's putting a lot of the pressure on the public. Is because a lot of people can't afford that.
Funnels everyone into the public because
you got no other choice.
For a lease.
Yeah.
Is it getting busier and busier out there as the years go on, as more like content gets put on YouTube and stuff? Is it getting busy?
YouTube is definitely messing up a lot of that public.
Yep.
It's one thing to have, just talk to your buddies about it, but when you get that many eyes on them in YouTube, and then you combined it with COVID, and everyone was at home, I see it with elk hunting really bad. Like there's tons of people trying to elk hunt now, which is good and bad. I mean, it's phenomenal. I can't blame them for trying to go out and elk hunt, but it's making it a lot tougher. That public land, sometimes you roll into a trailhead and there's 30 trucks there.
Do you think OnX played a factor in that too?
OnX gives people the confidence to go back in.
Right.
To know where they're at.
And it allows people to find, especially for whitetails, it allows people to find pinch points and those hot spots, and then it gives them the confidence to walk in there in the dark, whatever, and they know they're going to get out.
You don't have to put the legwork in of like studying maps.
In
physical form.
You can e-scout. You can e-scout, and then you pop open that phone with OnX on there. You know exactly where you're at.
It's awesome.
It's phenomenal. Yeah.
Did you do much scouting for that trip?
I did a ton.
Like in person, not out there?
No, I never got out there to do a shed hunting trip. I actually wanted to go back out there and shed hunt this spring, just to walk all the stuff that I
based on the number of deer you saw. I'm sure the shed's everywhere.
I'm going to go back out next spring and do it.
Yeah.
Do a shed hunting trip. There's just so much security cover. There's no way that all those sheds are getting picked up. There's just a lot of land.
Yeah. So we were talking about acorns out there. All of them are out there, not much here, but it didn't stop you from whacking a couple bucks in mass this year, right?
Yeah, it was just it was a different year. It's just without the mass crop and without any apples, it really screwed up, especially the late season, because then you're concentrating more and more on food. But a lot of those big oak ridges that normally have deer spread all throughout them, and I can get on deer 2-3 miles from the road, they were vacant. They didn't have any deer.
Just gone.
Because there was no acorns, and that was the main food source out there. The deer were around thermal cover. I either found them around log cuts, like logging areas, or swamps, or just thick hemlock and mountain laurel security cover, thermal cover.
That's what they were in.
Yeah.
No kidding.
And they were usually spread out throughout those oak ridges, and you could figure out where they were bedding and everything just from all my spring scouting, but with no acorns pretty much the past 2 years, it really started to catch up with us.
Yep. Because you were saying when we were talking there, when you get that December late season and you have those acorns, you can just about guarantee you're going to catch one on the side of a
Oh,
hill.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, from all the shed hunting I do down there, I know where those deer are starting to head for their winter yards and stuff, and you can catch them depending on the snowfall. You know where a lot of those big bucks are heading, and if they're not there yet, you know how to catch them in transition.
Yep. So you know those shedding areas, and that's where they're going to hang. And
depending on the snow, if we get snow right up past your knees, I'm like, I know where they're right where they're going to shed.
Yep.
Those deer are already there.
Yep.
And if we got mediocre snow, they're in transition. A lot of those deer will travel 2 or 3 miles to get there. So you can kind of hunt the transitions. But this year there was no big rush to get to any of the yard areas because there was no acorns. Usually when they're yarded up, they're eating acorns.
Gotcha.
So this year the deer weren't balled up as much. It was hard to find pockets with very many deer because it was all just browse. They couldn't really group up because there wasn't the food. So they were kind of spread out throughout the landscape. But I had a particular 2 bucks that I was hunting around this one big chain of swamps. And we finally got the snow to go in there and kill him. And it took me a while. I drove in there in the dark, probably about 2 hours before light, and I was just driving around on those log roads trying to cut his track. Either him or there were 2 really good bucks in there, but there was one that had a really cool non-typical rack. He had like an injury, I would say, in velvet, and his whole left side bent right down next to his face. He was a big 8, but he had like a big bent main beam that hung down. He was really cool looking. Mm-hmm. So I was excited to track him on the snow just because I knew he'd make tons of antler marks because his antlers were right down by his face, you know. And I ended up tracking him later in the day. I'll get to that after the 10. But the first buck that I found, he was at the very end of that swamp and he crossed. I'm like, that's like a 180-pound deer. That's got to be a good buck. And I just jumped out of the truck and I'm following his tracks. I didn't go 10 yards off the side of the road, and he dug up some ferns, and it was just antler marks all over the snow. I'm like, that's all I need to see. I just pulled the truck off the side of the road. I'm like, that's the one. I know that's one of those 2 bucks. Pulled the truck over, got all my stuff together, and I did a little video that's on YouTube there with just my cell phone, you know, talking about it. It was good and light, and started in on his track, and I mean, he went right into that swamp, right where I'd been bow hunting him. But he came into it from a little bit different angle. I kind of learned something about how them deer are going in there to bed, and I ended up jumping him and shooting him like 40 yards from my bow stand.
Really?
He bedded right by it. I was right in the bedding area right there, but I was just thinking he was coming into it from a different way. And I don't know how many mornings I sat there, 4 or 5, but it would be cool to know if he ever came in there and bedded while I was sitting in there and he came in from that awesome. Way, you know.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Not like I'll ever hunt him again, but another big buck is probably going to do similar stuff. So now I can kind of maybe situate a camera and try to cover that back door entrance. Yeah. So it was pretty cool though, tracking him in there, and I knew he was going to bed on this one little hump in the swamp, and it was just, he just kept digging up ferns and antler marks everywhere in the snow, and he was just eating, and I'm like, man, that he's not going far. Like, I mean, I'm within a half mile of him right now. That's what I like about postseason, is they're not traveling that far. Mm-hmm. And getting in there close to that hump where I knew he was going to bed, and sure enough, he jumped up out of some small spruces on my right and went running, angling away from me really hard. And he was running really fast, but there was a really good opening that he was going to hit before he left that swamp. And I was just ready for him in that opening. Boom! Shot, and I mean, the cloud of smoke disappears, and he's still running almost straight away from me in that same opening. I'm just like, man, I know I hit him. He's still right where if I had a rifle, I'd still be shooting in the same exact spot. And reloaded the muzzleloader, ran down there, and there's blood all over the snow. And I'm like, yeah, we're in the game, you know. So started following it, and he ended up going about 100 yards, and I caught him bedded and finished him. And that was a really nice 10 that I had a bunch of pictures of. Yep. I got to send the tooth out and see how old that deer is, but I got a feeling he was a pretty old buck.
Yep.
He had a really good stained forehead, and he was just he's all rutted out, but he still was 180 some odd pounds.
It's a good buck.
He was a big deer.
How long did you have pictures of that deer? Like, you've seen him for multiple years? Was
just
the first
this year
he moved in?
Just this year I'd gotten pictures of him. So so I loaded him, and I got him dragged out and got him to the truck, and it was like, man, it was probably only like a 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, you know.
I remember you were texting me that morning, like, just got him back to the truck, I'm heading back in.
I was all pumped up, and I'm just like, I texted one of my buddy Armin, and I'm just like, I got one in the truck, you know. I should probably just look for another track, huh? He's like, you're crazy if you're going to drive home. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, I'll just leave him in the back of the truck. And I drove around the other end of the swamp, and I'm driving around, and there's another buck track, and I'm just like, that's every bit as big as the one I just killed. And I guarantee you that was the one that I originally thought I was tracking. It's the bent main beam deer.
Yep.
And I tracked that deer for 2.5 miles in a straight line, and he rubbed every tree that he walked by. He was I've never seen one that aggressive in December. Like, he would annihilate a tree and break it off the size of my thumb, and just angry. And I was just like, that's that deer with the bent main beam. I bet he's got that really screwed up rack. So he was devastating every tree that he was hooking. You know, when you're following him and there's the rubs and the bark on top of the snow, you're pumped. You know, it's just like, how cool would it be to kill 2 big bucks in one day? Tracking, especially, you know?
Yeah.
So I followed that deer, and I ended up jumping him and almost got a shot at him. And I guarantee it was that buck. He had a hell of a set of antlers on his head, but just didn't get a shot at him. And then by the time I jumped him, he bailed down off the mountain into a nasty deep hole even further from the truck, and it was like 3:30, 4 o'clock. I'm like, no, I'm going to get headed. So I headed out, but I almost killed 2 that day. That was really cool.
That would have been. I mean, not to take away from your one.
No, it would have just made it would have made
unbelievable.
It would have made a phenomenal day, like an epic day.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, how often do you get to do that?
$2 tracking.
It's a once in a lifetime.
Load 2 in the truck. Yeah, it would have been so cool.
I kind of got a question on this. You said that was the first year he moved in. Do you find that deer in like mass like reload in areas a lot quicker than up Vermont or New Hampshire that way?
Oh, absolutely.
They pull right in.
Yeah.
New ones. Yep.
Yeah. This year was different just for the fact that I was hunting different areas because of the food sources.
Okay.
And I've always run cameras around this swamp because there's some really good oak ridges next to it, and they kind of relate to that swamp anyhow. Mm-hmm. But this year I was really concentrating on that swamp because there was tons of browse, good security cover, and a lot of the ridges around it were kind of open hardwoods. So those deer were kind of poured down into that swamp. And there was a good family group of does in there, 7 or 8 of them. So there were good bucks coming in and out of that swamp. It was it made the swamp more of a central hub of activity this year.
Gotcha.
As to years when there was acorns and those deer were kind of spread out throughout the ridges.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what kind of made me hunt the way that I hunted this year.
Yep.
I was just trying to find pockets of does where I knew bucks were going to come in there, and you needed a lot of browse and a lot of security cover to have that pocket of does, it seemed like.
Yeah.
So.
You said this year's just a lot different compared to other years in mass. Because, I mean, I've seen some of your other videos from back in the day.
Yeah.
Just looks like, different.
There's
different
usually
cover,
tons
like
of
you said.
acorns.
Yeah.
Those deer are usually eating acorns until, the snow melts in the beginning of April.
Yep. And they're tired at that point in the year and just dragging. Yep.
Late season, you can concentrate on food. And there's a lot. I mean, the food's everywhere, but you can get away from the roads. You can get away from people. Mm-hmm. So that's what I like about it.
Didn't see when I was down there. Didn't see a whole lot of hunting pressure in those public pieces.
Yeah.
That late season seems like everybody shoots some shotgun and then gets done with it down there.
Yeah, and a lot of deer shed early this year too. And
yeah,
that discouraged a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And that kind of rolls into the next year. We got a huge snowfall on December 17th or 16th, the night of, and it was like knee deep, like too much snow. But there was a really big buck that I've got some history with, and that was the next year that I wanted to go hunt. But he's really high elevation. That deer doesn't even come off the mountain even in the winter. He stays up there, top third. That's where I found his antlers for 3 years in a row now. Whether there's acorns or not, he lives up there in that thick mountain laurel, right where it turns to the green. It turns into that thermal cover, that top third of the mountain, and there's plenty of security cover up there for him. So I was just like, I'm going to start hiking about an hour before daylight, and I'm just going to slog up through all that deep snow and get up there and try to find that big bastard. He's up there somewhere, and I knew he was a really big, a 5-year-old buck, at bare minimum. I've been hunting him 5 years, so he's got to be 8, 9. He could be 10 years old. I don't know. It's hard to guess the age on him, but he's an old deer. And I hiked up in there, and I got right near one of my cameras, and there's a buck track or a deer track, and I'm just like, man, he's stepping really far. He's got a good wide, stagger to his track and everything. And the problem I was having, I couldn't figure out which direction he was going because he was walking during the middle of that storm. It was just like dimples in the snow. And he was headed for some really thick hemlocks. And once he got under those hemlocks, there was a lot less snow, and I could kind of blow the track out. And I was like, oh, I am following it the right way. So I wasn't very far from my camera, so I ran over there and to the camera, grabbed a card out of it, put a new one in it, and I didn't have a reader or anything, so I just stuffed it in my pocket. And I was just like, I'll just hopefully remember that before the card gets trashed, But there's no service up there, so I can't run a cell camera anywhere. It's just a regular camera. So I had that card in my pocket, and I walk back and get on that buck track, and I'm like, yeah, he looks like a good deer. It's really the only game in town I got right now, and I'm pretty sure it's a buck. Well, that deer, in that storm, a ton of hardwood tops had fallen down right in just out of the hemlocks and in the right where it starts into like white open oaks. A lot of maple, and a lot of those tops were falling down, and he was walking from top to top that had freshly fallen and just browsing and eating all the buds off of it. And he was spending like 20, 30 minutes at each top. It was just like every time I would leave a top, oh, wow, I can see his tracks so much better. And then he would get to the next top, and it would be like a pig pen around it, and I'd find where he left it. Wow, now I can see his track. By the time I left like the 6th or 7th top that he was browsing on, I was just like, I'm right behind him. Like, I mean,
Game on.
It hadn't snowed, and I can see the hair. The snow was wet at that point, and you could see where he was stepping in the snow, and you could just see every hair in between his hooves. Like you could see every detail. I'm like, that deer's right here. And he's on his feet. He hadn't bedded yet. And the wind was kicking up and it was knee-deep snow. I'm like, there's no way I can't kill this deer. Like he's dead. I just gotta keep my head on a swivel, catch him before he sees me. And I'm following, and I know that mountain like the back of my hand. I mean, I've walked every inch of it shed hunting for I don't know how many years now. So I mean, everywhere he's going, I know exactly what's ahead of me, the contour of the land. I can kind of cut off his track if I need to because I know he's going through a thick patch. And I'm getting him on a side where I found a matched set of his sheds. And I'm just like, I know he likes being over here. If this is that buck, I've found his sheds right here on this side. There's an edge of mountain laurel and some hemlocks. And I found that matched set one time right on the edge of those hemlocks, right where it breaks into the oaks. But that year there was oaks, but he's still right in that thermal cover. And, I mean, I came around that side hill, and I caught him browsing at 70 yards. And I'm just like, there he is right there. And I brought the gun up, had it right on him, and he picks his head up, looks back over his shoulder, and he's got nothing on his right side. I'm like, okay, he's lost one side. I mean, he's a 200-pound buck standing there looking at me. I'm like, that's definitely him. Got big old flat forehead on him, you know, big blocky head. And I'm like, am I going to it's all running through my head like 100 miles an hour, but I'm like, am I going to shoot him if he just has one side? Like, I can probably find that other side. It's here somewhere. And then he moves his head. He turns his head. He's got nothing. No antlers on his head. I'm like, well, that just answered that question. You know, and he just walked right down. He kind of stiff-legged walked down. He'd caught me at that point. And he just boogered down off the hill, and I'm just like, well, I'm done tracking him. I guarantee you that was that huge buck. So I left, and I'm just like, I'm like almost 3 miles from the truck at this point, like 2.5, 2 3/4. I'm like, what am I going to do now? I'm like, well, there's another knob. I'm looking at it like across this big valley of hardwoods. I'm like, I found a bunch of sheds over on that knob. Maybe I'll go over there on that knob because it's all thermal cover on the top, really good bedding. I found sheds over there. There could be another buck over there on that knob. Walked way down through that basin, and in that open hardwoods, it was really deep snow. Down through that basin, up the other side. Just as I'm getting up into that real thick spruce and hemlock and mountain laurel, I can see a track ahead of me, and it's smoking fresh. Like there's little chunks of snow right up on top of the snow. The deer had just done it hours ago. And I get up and I can look way down in the track, and I'm like, that's a decent deer. He's nowhere near as big as that other deer, but maybe he's got antlers on his head, you know. I'm pretty much done after today because that was the deer that I was going to kill, and if all the other big mature bucks are shedding, I'm pretty much done. So I'm just like, I'm pretty sure this is a buck. And then I could see where he pissed in the snow, and I'm just like, it's definitely a buck. I could just tell by the way he was walking. And then you could see some tarsal gland stains in the snow, pick him up. Yep, it's a buck. So he's heading out this finger, and it's all thick mountain laurel. And I'm like, this finger is going to end, and it's going to turn into ledge. Like, I know the wood's really good, and it's kind of a plateau. I'm like, he's running out of real estate because he's not going to walk down through all those ledges and stuff. Like, he's within 200 yards of me. And it's all kind of spotty mountain laurel with trails around it. And mind you, everything's just hanging down with snow. You can only see 15, 20 yards. So I'm weaving out through that mountain laurel, and he goes right into a thick patch of it. And I'm like, I know it's open on the left, and that's the downwind side. I'm just going to walk around this mountain laurel and then pick his track up on the other side of it. And the patch is probably, it's probably 30, 40 yards square. So I walk around that patch of mountain laurel, and I'm just about to where I should be cutting his track again. And I see snow fall off a mountain laurel branch out in front of me. And then I see something moving, and I'm like, oh, there's a deer. And the deer's coming right at me, and I'm like, it's that buck. So, I mean, that would have been the time to have the GoPro on my shoulder because I shot that deer at like 6 yards.
Oh, that close?
Like, he came around, he was just coming right at me, so I didn't even aim.
Just point and pull.
The deer walked right up like 6 yards, all that snow hanging down. Boom! Shot him, and the deer just turns around and runs back the other way. I didn't even reload the muzzleloader. I'm just like,
that's my last shot.
I'm all done. I just punched that buck like perfect. You know, he only went 20 yards, and that was a nice 7. So that was a good way to end the season. You know, in deep snow with a good story about that buck. So fast forward to this spring, I go back in there when the snow finally melted, and I found both sides.
How close to that area of where you caught him browsing?
Well, I checked my camera, and he walked by the camera. just before that storm with no antlers on his head. And I got him 2 days before that walking by with the antlers on his head. So I looked at the direction he was going from, coming from and going to and everything, and I have it right on the outskirts of his bedding area. I'm like, I know those antlers are probably right in his bed. And I got up there, it took me a few, 4 or 5 hours that day, and that thick mount laurel, but I found him laying right in his bed, 100 yards from my camera.
Really?
Like right where I cut the trap.
Right there. That was core area, wasn't moving.
Yeah.
That's cool that he's a homebody like that up there on top.
And he's super old. Yep. He's just a cool buck,
Yeah. Well, this year
he's in deep trouble.
Yep.
And he's an early shedder, so I got to get in there and try to kill him with a bow.
Yep.
I'm gonna try to do it at the end of October and get him.
Yep. That's awesome. Is there like a doe group up there that he hangs around with, or is he just like an old hermit that's just hanging out up there?
That buck leaves zero sign.
He's just a ghost up on top.
He doesn't rub trees or.
If you can find 5 rubs up there, all that walking around I do, it's amazing.
Wow.
Really?
He just doesn't. You look at all of his sheds. There's no broken tines. Those sheds, there's no scars on them from where he's fighting other deer. There's no nicks. There's no bark in the bases of them.
He just wants to be.
I think when them deer get that old, their testosterone lowers right down, and they just don't. And some of them have that personality, I think, where they're just not aggressive.
Yeah, just like us humans. Yeah.
There's some of them that are just like, I'm just gonna go through the motions, and I'm just worrying about myself.
Just living.
He doesn't chase does around, I don't think.
Stays up, so like just the whole rut he's up there.
Yeah.
Hangs out by himself.
Yeah, I think he acts like it's the first week of October his whole life.
Yep.
That's awesome.
I just think that's what he does.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that a lot with some of the best bucks that I've found, leave very little sign. I think those deer that leave a ton of sign and are really aggressive, they get killed and they don't get old.
Yeah.
But you're seeing a lot of those really big mature bucks that are older age class, especially if they live to be over 6, they don't leave any sign. And I think that's key to their survival. I think a lot of people walk that mountain and they don't see any, if someone does walk that mountain, they don't see any buck sign. They're just like, well, I'm not coming back here. Yep. But I mean, I've found sheds and I've got pictures of him, so I know right where he lives.
Yeah. So that mountain gets hunted, just nobody.
Oh, it's all public. Yeah, it's all public ground.
Just don't see him, so he's just up there hiding.
Yeah. Yeah. If they don't leave any sign, it's like everyone just breezes by it. No one's going to hike up there with that deep snow, and they didn't see any buck sign up there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That snowstorm was rugged too. I was down there. That was right. Yeah, like you said, right up the knees. That wore you out.
Way too much.
How did you ever find him, being that he didn't lay down sign? Like, how did you?
Shed hunting and running cameras in there.
Just figured him out.
Yeah. Found those sheds. The first time I got a picture of him, it was during the peak rut, and it was like 3 miles from there. And I got a picture of him at like 1 a.m. walking by a camera, and I'm like, man, that's a stud of an 8-point. And I never got another picture of him. I'm like, well, he doesn't live here. So I got working my way further and further away from that ridge and looking for sheds, and then pretty soon I found his antlers. And I'm like, I bet you that's that same buck that I got the pictures of. So then I got looking around in there, and I found another one of his antlers. And then I started running cameras over there, and then I got pictures of him.
Zoned him
in velvet, and I got pictures of him in April walking around in there. We just, all shed out and looking like he's been run through a washing machine, after the winter, he's just an old man.
Yeah.
But he's still surviving up there.
Can't be much food up there for him. It just
there's just a lot of there's just browse. There's a lot of mountain laurel and there's a lot of softwood.
Mm-hmm.
And then when there's acorns, he's got more acorns and he knows what to do with.
Yeah. So he just drops off the edge at night and just goes feeds and he comes right back up.
And he's in security cover that's so thick it's crazy.
Like that mountain laurel can get super thick.
Yeah.
And they can have interweaving trails all through.
Oh,
you wouldn't even know.
Yeah. And when I found his antlers, that really was like the light bulb, because I walked in on that little bench and I was just like, man, everything in the hemlocks is all browsed. 5 feet and lower is gone. Yeah. All the deer shit that I'm seeing on the ground is all big. I'm like, wow, there's some really big tracks right here. I'm like, this is his bedroom right here. And I'm like, and it was funny because I was like, his left side's the one with the drop tine on it. I'm like, I'd really love to just find that left side because that's the one with the drop tine on it. And I was like saying that out loud because I've been hiking trying to figure out where that deer was. And I said that out loud, and I just looked to my left, and there's the left side. I'm just like, oh, my God. I picked up that left side, and I looked to my right, and there's the right side laying right on the other side of the bed. It was just like, and you could see his bed right there. Like, I mean, has hair in it, right at the base of a big hemlock.
That was his,
that's your bed.
His home base right there.
So it's cool to be dialed in like that. Like, that's his bed.
Yeah.
So
Didn't you have a similar story with that 5-pointer you got a couple years ago, that old buck?
Yeah.
Wasn't that a similar story? He was kind of recluse.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
was it similar as far as
the key to killing him was a snowstorm
Really?
that we got, and I walked in there with that snow after we'd had it on the ground for a day, and that really led me to exactly where he was bedding, how he was going, because he had a huge foot on him.
Mm-hmm. Super cool
So
buck.
snow puts a lot of it together for you too.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, that's a good point. You learn a lot when you're tracking, just following bucks and
absolutely.
everything. You're going to take you
Yeah.
through all that stuff, which we've said before on the podcast. But I don't know if I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, but we got my buddy Riley here filling in for Greg tonight.
What's up,
and
what's up?
Kind of the topic of this episode is we had a lot of guys wanted to know more about Mass. There's more and more interest in that late season because everybody piles out of Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, wants to get down there one last go.
Yeah, don't go to Mass. Don't go to Mass.
No deer down there, right?
No,
Yeah,
don't go down there.
Quit.
If you do, go to Eastern Mass.
Yeah.
Don't go to Eastern.
Right down to the city bucks.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
the
where they all are.
the bigger antlers are down there.
A lot of bucks
no
down
question
there.
about it.
Oh, yeah, you see it's crazy down
Oh,
there.
the deer they're killing down there near Boston is crazy.
Yeah.
Have you ever dabbled in hunting or
I haven't.
bow hunting and whatnot?
You know, I got some buddies that do, and I told them, I'm just like, I just want to come down there and stock up on does.
Yeah.
I want to get down there and slay some does. I love venison, so
Yep.
I would love to go
Stock
to
the
Eastern Mass
freezer.
just to whack a bunch of does.
Just living in people's backyards out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, you know, do some bow hunting and fill the freezer.
Yeah, have fun with it. See a lot of deer.
But there's some good, if you worked on really good property down there, there's phenomenal deer down there. You know, it's just.
Yep.
But I like the mountains. I like killing a deer and being 2 miles from
Yeah,
my
it's
truck.
still similar to what you kind of grew
Yeah.
up hunting around here, but just a little bit different.
I like it steep. I just like those steep mountains. I like really earning it.
Mhm.
It's just fun.
And there's some deer in there too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of going off, we're talking Mass and stuff. Let's talk a little bit about mountain laurel, like what Riley said. Kind of talk about how you go about finding deer with the mountain laurel, navigating around it, how the deer react to it from your experience.
Well, I think it's a key component to having big bucks. Like, you know, a lot of people avoid mountain laurel like the plague because it sucks to walk through.
Oh, yeah.
It's noisy. If you get snow and you get a little bit of freezing rain or something, it turns into like wind chimes. You know, it's really noisy. It can get so thick that the deer don't go into it, but man, it just creates phenomenal edges. And if you can get mountain laurel to line up with terrain features and have food nearby, you can have all those edges all coming together. You got food, you know, oaks, you got food and cover and terrain features all coming together. You got everything they need.
That's a takeaway right there.
And a deer can live in a you know, a mile square and have everything he needs.
You know? No kidding. Yeah.
And a huge part is water. Like if you can have water on that side hill and you got mountain laurel, food, you've got everything they need. They got water, food, and cover.
You find them relating a lot more to water down there than you do up this way as far as...
Especially for shed hunting.
Yeah, shed hunting?
For sheds,
Okay.
yeah.
Interesting.
I've never found a big shed that wasn't right near running water.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a good tip right there. Write that one down.
Yeah.
No shit.
That's a huge pattern for me.
Yeah. So on a normal year, so say this past year wasn't normal and the deer are hanging in the thermal cover and security cover, like you said. What's like a normal Mass year when there's a lot more?
Normal Mass year, there's acorns where deer are they're eating acorns when you're going in there to shed hunt in April.
Okay.
There's
piled
still
there,
acorn. There's usually a bumper crop down there.
Tripping on them.
So that 11-pointer you have that's on YouTube and stuff. Why don't you take us through that for the people that haven't seen that video? Because that was like a normal Mass year.
That was a normal Mass year where we had a lot of acorns. And there's certain basins, you know, from hunting, there's certain basins they prefer. There can be one basin that's loaded with acorns, but they eat those in October, November. But once you get the snow on, there's certain wintering basins that they head to late season.
No kidding.
And that's just from wearing boot leather off to figure it out
how they're eating them.
It's just the amount of miles that I've got logged in down there is crazy. So that buck I knew was on that side hill because I was up in there. It was very beginning of muzzleloader season. We had some snow, and I got up in there, and it was spotty, not enough to track, but it was enough so I could get up in there in those oaks, and I could see a deer feeding in the oaks, and there were antler marks everywhere in the snow whenever he'd put his head down to eat acorns. So I knew there was a really good one in there. Then we lost the snow, and I hunted a little bit on bare ground, but I don't gun hunt down there with bare ground very much at all. I know I'm going to get snow at some point, so I just wait until I get the snow. Mm-hmm. When it's bow season down there, I'm bow hunting every day that I can. Mm-hmm. You know, because I'm sitting in a stand, but I don't like sitting in a stand with a gun 99% of the time.
Yep.
So we got some snow, and I got back down there, and by the time I got back down there, the snow had come early in the afternoon, so it had a full night worth of travel, and I was walking up in there at first light. So there's a lot of deer in there late season, but I knew there was a good buck in there. My plan was just to get up in there, not necessarily track, but to get into the mix of the deer, get into where all the deer sign was, and just kind of still hunt through it. I know a bunch of benches where the deer are bedding, kind of still hunt up onto those benches, and those deer are up and feeding all throughout the day late season because they're way back on the mountain. They're 2 miles back in, you know.
Yep.
They just don't have the pressure. They don't get pressure back that far. So I'm working my way back up in there at first light, and there's a really good saddle. My plan was I was going to get up into that saddle and kind of stand there for 20, 30 minutes at first light and then figure out what I was going to do from there. Well, I'm just getting into that saddle, and it's just cracking legal shooting light, and there's a deer walking on the side hill, left to right. And the deer walks through an opening, and I'm like, he's got plenty of antler. He's a 130-inch buck walking left to right, and I'm like, holy, I'm going to kill him right there. I pinched right up next to a tree, and I had the muzzleloader all cocked, 70 yards walking broadside, left to right, at a slow walk. And, crosshairs went right up his neck, right into the point of his shoulder. Pa-poom! Gun goes off, and the deer nose pitches right into the snow, and he's right over, head over heels. And he's laying there, one leg kicking in the air. I'm like, he's dead. I shot him right through both shoulders. That's a beauty. And I'm reloading the muzzleloader. And I get the powder in there, and I'm getting the bullet halfway down, and I look, and the deer's getting to his feet, but not well. Yeah. Like, he doesn't have a good leg under him. I'm like, he's done. I'm just concentrate on what you're doing, and I'm getting the muzzleloader loaded, and I'm getting to where I'm going to put the primer on, and the deer's running down the hill right at me. Pretty soon, he's, like, within 10 yards. And it's like he definitely sees me because I'm orange vest on, fumbling around trying to get a primer into the damn gun, and he sees me and he bails down off the hill to my right. And I'm like, it's all wide open hardwoods down through there. He's dead. Get the gun loaded, run over there to his track, and I don't see him laying there. I don't see him standing there in the hardwoods, and following his track for about 100 yards, and I don't see any blood. And I'm like, that's kind of typical of a muzzleloader. At the time, I couldn't find a good muzzleloader bullet. Now I've got my setup pretty much dialed in now. I'm very happy with what I'm shooting now. Wasn't at the time. They shot great, but man, they did not expand. It was like shooting a deer with a field point on an arrow. Mm-hmm. There's just no expansion. So I get following that deer, and I can see down through that hardwoods now for like almost 200 yards, and I can see a deer standing way down on the bottom of it. And I bring the scope up, and it's him, and he's gone. Like that quick. He's walking, trotted right out of sight, and I couldn't get a shot. I was like, what is going on? So I walked right back to where he was fumbling around in the snow, and there's a little bit of blood there, but like hardly any. I'm like, where did I was right on that buck, I was like right on the point of his shoulder. I tracked that deer the rest of the day. He never bedded. He ended up just before dark, ran right into a group of a pile of deer, and he didn't have a huge foot on him. He was only like a 170-pound deer, but he didn't have a big foot on him. And since he wasn't bleeding or anything, he got into a pile of other deer, and I totally lost him. And then it started snowing, and I was bummed out. I was just like, man, I don't think I killed him because he hasn't even bedded, and I've tracked him 2 miles just now since I shot him. He just a heavy walk, never caught up to him. So bummed out. 2 weeks later, it was a day after Christmas. We went back in there, and I'm just like, I know that mountain's got some deer on it. Now we've got a little bit of fresh snow. Walk up in there and see what happens. So we walked up in there, and I cut a track that I knew was a buck. I followed it, and he's starting to paw for acorns. Boom, there's antler marks all over the snow. I'm like, that's a good buck. So he gets in with some other deer, and I kind of hook around and get around the barnyard of all the tracks and everything and find him leaving it. And I was like, that's him leaving right there. That's his track. And just the way he's dragging his feet and walking, I'm like, I bet it's that same deer that's making the antler marks. We didn't follow him 200 yards, and I caught him bedded right on a little hemlock hummock. Yep. And watched him for a while before I could finally get a shot at him. Had to keep shuffling around. It was like forever to try to get a shot at that deer. And boom, I shot him, and I know I hit him through the right shoulder, and the bullet exited like right at the point of the left shoulder. So I didn't hit him as far back as I wanted to. I don't know if I hit a limb, because it was kind of brushy. And the deer gets up out of his bed and runs through an opening, and then I really see how big he is. I'm like, man, he's just as big as that buck I shot up here 2 weeks ago. He's a damn good one. So we get down there and we get following the deer around. He's not bleeding. It's like there's hair blown out the backside of him where he was laying in the bed, and there's just a few spots of blood. Nothing. I'm just like, man, these bullets. I'm done with this. Followed that deer, and he got up over a little finger, and I knew it was open hardwoods on the other side. So I get up to that top, and I'm creeping up, and I can look down into that hardwoods, and there's a deer standing there. And I pulled up, and I've got it on that deer like I was going to shoot it, and it takes a couple steps at the doe. I'm like, what's that doe doing there? And she's like looking to my left, looking. And I look to my left, and he's standing down there like staggering back and forth in the hardwoods. And I'm like, oh, there he is right there. Boom, shoot him again, like last rib angled up in. Deer mule kicks, takes off. I'm like, there, he's dead.
Done.
We go down there, get on his track, and there's hair, still not very much blood, but the bullet zipped right through him. And get over another little knob, and I catch him bedded, and his head's still up. I shot him again. And that was the last time. So we get down there. It's a beautiful 10-point with a kicker off his base. Nice, 130-inch buck. Great deer. And we're looking at the deer, talking about it, and I looked, and there's this huge dried blob of blood right at the point of his shoulder. And it's 2 weeks old. It's the same buck I shot 2 weeks ago right on the same mountain.
Finish the
and
story.
you could see the bullet, you could see where it went in right at the point of the shoulder and came right out dead, the same exact spot on the other side. Because he was like even with me on the side hill. So I was shooting flat, 90 degrees to him, and he was perfectly 90 degrees broadside. But when I deboned that deer, that bullet zipped right through just in front of the point of the shoulder bone where it does that corner, and just mixed his neck, the vertebrae.
And it nicked the vertebrae?
It just missed it. Just if I'd have
half
been an
an
inch lower, I'd
everything.
have broke his spine, and he would have piled up right there. But if that bullet had have expanded, even in the slightest, that deer would have been done that day.
He must have been some confused when he got up.
Oh,
you just knocked the wind out of him then, pretty much, right?
Yeah, he made a huge snow angel there, and it was a steep side hill. He slid on the snow for like 10 feet, and then got up, and he was plastered in snow when he gets to his feet. And he was running down at me, and he's got snow in his rack and all over his forehead and stuff. And I was just like, he's a mess. That deer's dead. Nope.
Never know.
So it just goes to show,
especially with muzzleloader.
Yeah.
Those older muzzleloaders.
Yeah, that was a Barnes bullet, and I just didn't have very good luck with them. Some people have had phenomenal luck with them. But
same story for me with those older muzzleloaders.
Yeah.
Was that a 50 cal too?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a 50 cal.
What are you running now? Because
now I'm running the
them
Woodsman,
Yep.
and I'm running their bullets, that 225 grain bullet that they make, and I've owned that Woodsman for 2 years. I've shot 4 bucks with it, and every deer has been like phenomenal blood trail.
Yeah.
So that's and I think you get a little bit more velocity with that 45 cal.
Zipping right in there.
So I think the bullet's getting it's getting a better chance to
Expand.
do its job.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I'm getting the muzzle loader's dialed now.
Yeah.
The setup is good because I was always scared to shoot a deer on bare ground with a muzzleloader because I never had blood trails. Mm-hmm. But usually muzzleloader season, it's late season. I got snow anyways, so it didn't bother me because they always shot good, but it wasn't effective as far as there was no performance from the bullet. And sometimes you don't tracking. You don't always get the perfect shots.
Yeah, you got to shoot.
You got to be shooting. You know? There's there's lead in the air. There's hope.
Yeah, that's true. You got to pull the trigger. Absolutely. And you said that first buck you shot this year was taken out of some spruces, right? He was taken off and
and he was running. He was running really hard quartered away. I hit that deer last rib, and it came out right in the point of the shoulder.
So and went all the way through.
And that deer was just like spraying blood everywhere.
Yeah. Those are the hollow points on those new. Are they like hollow-ish
points? They're a hollow point, and they're pre-stressed. I have not recovered a bullet yet from a deer. Right, everything's been going through, and the exit hole's been really good. I mean, I haven't recovered a bullet yet.
They got something figured out then with those.
Yeah, no, there's everything that Woodsman with their bullet and Blackhorn 209 powder you are dialed in.
Yep.
It's awesome.
Yeah, that's a good combo. Got to get mine ordered.
And holding them too. They just carry nice.
They've got the best trigger of any muzzleloader I've ever shot. I mean, it's super crisp, 3 pounds, and that's a lot of muzzleloaders have a junky trigger on them.
Yeah.
Everything about that gun is dialed in.
So they got the hammerless, right? So you don't have to.
Yeah, you just got to
get
safety.
That big hammer to drop down.
Yeah, you just got to make sure you cock it when you pull that trigger guard to just pull it till it clicks.
Yep.
That's all you got to do.
No kidding. Huh.
It's a great gun.
Oh, yeah. So I have a question for you. So this year whether they're shedding early, because I mean I was down there late season and I saw a bunch of other guys were down there late season posting on Facebook and stuff. They're tracking bucks and finding the sheds in their bed and catching up to bucks that with no horns on their head. Was it just the lack of feed this year that causes that early drop down there, or was it something else you think?
I'm not. It would just be a guess on my part, but it's got to be stress related. It's got to be stress related, and the fact that there's no gun season during the rut in that state, I think they get a lot of their breeding done on time.
Yeah.
Like when those does are coming in between the 14th and the 18th, all there is bow hunting pressure. So I think they get it done. And I mean, I've seen them shed super early, even years when there's tons of acorns.
Really?
They shed the earliest of any deer in the country, as far as I know.
Really?
Huh.
I mean, there's people in the Midwest, they're just like, it's crazy you saw a deer all shed out December 17th. I'm like, I'm not alone.
And you see some guys in, Maine and Vermont, New Hampshire, they're holding horns into freaking March sometimes.
Yeah.
Just a rare one, but that's...
Oh, absolutely.
So they just...
Yeah, and I've seen it that way too. I walked onto that one hillside. It was second week of March. I walked up there to shed hunt. I mean, I hiked way up on that mountain. I get into this basin, and there's deer everywhere. So I'm just standing there looking at them all with binoculars, and there's an 8-pointer standing there. Second week of March. So I just turned around and walked off the mountain.
Get the hell out of there.
I'm just like, I've got no rush. I mean, it's just like...
They'll be there when you get back.
I want to find those too, so I just left.
Yep.
And I came back, 3 weeks later or whatever, and assumed they were on the ground at that point.
Yeah.
Like, if he hasn't dropped them by April, then I don't know.
It's going to hold him through there.
He can have them. I don't care where he goes now. Whatever. I was just,
Yeah. So they're just getting that.
And that was a year when there was like marbles on the ground. Acorns everywhere.
Yeah.
And that deer hung on that late, but yet there were antlers everywhere up there that deer dropping in December. So
interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting.
And I've heard of that happening for years. Like, I've talked to some guys that have hunted mass for 20, 30 years, and they've talked about shotgun season, seeing really big, especially the older ones, seeing really big bucks that are all shed out, the end of shotgun even, before muzzleloader. Huh.
That's wild.
So I don't know why.
Just biologically they get done breeding. They don't need to fight anymore.
I don't need to... Kind of a deer-by-deer basis.
Yeah, almost, I think, some deer are going to be different. But like one year... Temperature might have a lot to do with it. There was one year we had 20 below zero temperatures right at the end of December, very beginning of January. I walked into an apple orchard and I found two antlers that were like 60 inches. Wow. And they were off 2 different bucks. And they were smoking fresh, like blood right on the bases of them. That was January 3rd, I believe. And I went back in there the next day, found a match set of like a 7-pointer. And it was like, deer shouldn't be shedding then.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's so weird. And that 7-pointer was like a 2.5-year-old buck. It wasn't like he was old.
Yeah.
So, and he was in a commercial apple orchard. There's tons of food.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, I don't know. It's just they do shed early. That's the thing. That's the one thing I wish Mass would do differently is they'd take away the doe season, late season. I wish once it got to be December 10th or whatever, or once it got to be muzzleloader season, don't have a doe tag anymore. Just because that's like my greatest nightmare is like, could you imagine a 10-year-old buck? He's made it all the way through and he gets shot, doe tag put on him.
That's true. I didn't think about it like
terrible.
That's
terrible. That's
tag does a doe.
So poor bastard made it all the way through and he got shot as a doe.
If you did that, you'd have to go back in there just trying to find a shed.
Yeah, but
just to give you some substance of what he was.
That's the thing. They're just like, oh, that's a big deer right there.
There's
four deer standing on the side hill and they shoot a big old 8.5-year-old buck, and he's got his, who knows where he dropped his antlers,
It's it happens.
Yeah.
When you're down in, Riley goes down to Long Island in January for that shotgun season on there.
Yeah.
Isn't like half of those split? Sometimes they're shed, sometimes they're not.
Most of the time they're shed out, but you'll get once in a while there'll be a buck with horn still, but it's hit or miss though.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It all depends on how much you hunt the area too. Like, this is where I hunt all the time.
Right.
So it's like
you get a good.
I just like dread the fact of that big old buck getting killed.
Yeah.
On a doe tag, because you'd never know that that's why he was dead.
Guys will get mad down there. They'll be like, "Oh, I'm shooting all the shed bucks," and it's like, I don't know.
It could be bad. I mean, he could be a giant, and
right?
And then you're just like, where did he go?
Yeah. Just
because one of the best bucks that I've ever hunted down there, he just vanished, and it was like the next spring that I had to look for his sheds.
Yep.
It was COVID, so it was just like they'd shut down work in my town. I couldn't, so all I did was shed hunt like for a month straight. And I was thinking I was going to find his antlers. I never found his sheds, never found him dead anywhere. And he was a Boone and Crockett-sized deer.
Jeez.
Like you'd have heard if he got killed, I think. Not unless some old guy just shot him and cut his horns off, hung him in the garage.
It's possible.
Yeah. I don't know, but
makes you wonder.
I don't know. He was a hell of a buck, but it's like, or did he lose those sheds in a weird spot and then get shot on a doe tag?
Could have been too.
It's like you never know what happens. Some of them just disappear.
It probably happens quite a bit down there, just shooting those.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Especially when in that year, the year that he disappeared, that was the year we had snow up to my pockets of my pants. The first day of shotgun season.
Really?
We had like 3.5, 4 feet of snow.
When does that shotgun season start?
It's right around the beginning of December, very last part of November.
Because that's like what, 7 or 10 days, and then it goes to
muzzleloader till the end of the year.
Yeah, they hunt them late, but
yeah. There's no gun season until post rut.
So it's bow all the way through the rut, and no kidding. Yeah. Do you find much for sheds up in Vermont at all anymore?
I do when there's good food, when we have acorns.
Then it's worth going and looking.
Yeah.
That's not an easy thing to do in Vermont, is find sheds as far as...
No, there's a couple good pockets I've found over the years, but there's got to be acorns. Acorns or apples.
Gotcha.
If there's a ton of apples, there's a couple apple orchards I know but the deer in Vermont seem to hang on, into February. So they'll be on some of that food, but they definitely head to a winter yard. And our deer travel a long ways. I've got pictures of deer in Westover and found their sheds in Newfane, which could be 15 miles.
Migrating cross country.
Yeah. And that huge buck we talked about in that third podcast.
Yeah, I was going to tie it back into that.
That deer went 15, 18 miles in one direction to winter.
That's incredible.
From where he was in the end of October.
Because
you found like Maine almost.
Oh, yeah, exactly like that. Yeah, they have to or they're going to be dead.
Yeah.
They just don't get those big migration trails that they have.
They don't have anywhere to live.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no food to sustain them. But
for the winter.
Nobody ever killed that buck, right? That we talked about in the first.
No, he was found
was he a booner?
Yeah, the last set of sheds, he was right at 170 with no eye guards.
No brow tines. Yeah, I remember that picture. I think it's still on our Instagram page because you sent it to us.
I got to go get those sheds from that guy and have you guys see it sometime. It's a hell of a deer. It's the best Vermont buck I've ever known to exist.
Crazy
for me, anyways.
There hasn't been a Vermont buck like that.
I can't find another one like him.
No, you're the one to know to be looking around.
I can't find another one that's like that. He was pretty special.
Yeah. It seems like Vermont, the last few, 5-10 years down like the Windsor County down to this way, it seems like we're the best rack bucks and honestly best bodied bucks are being killed in Vermont.
Yeah.
So it's
the biggest antlers are in the southern part of Vermont. No question.
Just acorns down here because we got no acorns up our way. It's just
I think it's acorns and genetics. Yep. And they've got the genetics to have heavy bodies up in the Northeast Kingdom. But they don't, you see a deer that weighs 220, but he's got like 80 inches of antler on his head. It's like just
a different
breed of deer almost.
Yeah, it's just a different type of deer. Our big bucks down in the southern part, a big one is, a big body deer. You kill him in rifle season, he's 165 to 185.
Yep.
That's like the weight range.
Yep.
Crazy.
They're short and stocky.
Yeah.
They don't have it's hard to get one with a big long body, you need that big long body.
But better horns.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I have no problem shooting a 170-pound buck. I'll shoot everyone that comes by me.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's plenty big enough. They got 130 inches of antler or better on their head. That's a good deer. They're 5 years old. That's a hell of a buck.
Yeah. I can't wait to see you get that buck this year, that mass buck. That's going to be
It's going to be a great story.
Yeah. A lot of history with that thing. And
that's my main goal. That's my main goal this whole deer season. If I can kill him, then the rest is gravy, whatever happens.
And that big 5-pointer killed a couple years ago, that was like your main target buck for a while before this one, right?
Yeah.
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 It's cool. Yeah. You get, I like
he was just old. I was just looking at him on the trail camera and I'm just like, God, that deer looks ancient. Yeah. And I just love those old bucks on public, They might not score good, but they're just an old deer.
That's the smartest of the deer.
Yeah.
If you're hunting a buck that has that much age on public land, that's the smartest of the deer you can kill in the woods.
Yeah. Those are the deer I really like.
Yeah. They've got a lot of stories to tell.
Yeah, absolutely.
It makes you wonder how many hunters have walked by. You said it's public land, but he's up there recluse. Just how many hunters have walked through there, and he's just sitting, letting them go by.
That's the feeling of accomplishment. You did something no one else has been.
Yep.
You did something. You figured him out different.
Yep. That's that prestige of killing those old bucks and that that satisfaction you get out of doing it, which isn't easy.
Yeah.
In Vermont.
And this one, him not leaving any sign. It's like super hard to figure out where to kill him. because he's not making rubs. There's no scrapes up there.
Oh, he's not laying any scrapes.
I made mock scrapes. I can't even get a picture of him in a mock scrape.
No
if I get a picture of him, if I get a picture of him, it's in a bedding area on a trail. That's it.
Interesting.
And it's like very. I mean, I can have cameras 60 yards apart on 2 different trails and 2 different benches, and like I've only got pictures of him on that one camera.
So he's got a certain route that he follows?
I have dialed that deer in, I'm hoping. I don't know. I'm going to jinx the hell out of myself by saying that, but I've got a lot of hours into him, put it that way, and it's going to be a fun, whether I kill him or not, it'll be super fun to know I'm hunting that deer.
You got to kill him soon or else he might...
He's going to die of old age or he's going to shed. I'm just going to find his sheds forever, one or the other.
How many years of sheds you got? 3 or 4?
I've got 3 years, and another guy I know has got 1 year in between the year that I missed.
So you got 4 years of sheds on him.
Yeah. And I've known of him existing for 5.
And you look back at the earliest sheds you have, and he's still got that
he's
older buck
he's
mass,
still a Pope and Young sized deer.
Exactly.
That first shed.
So you're going to get him with a bow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got it before he sheds.
Yeah. What's Pope and Young, 120?
125.
125?
Yeah.
That's a cool buck. Yeah, the mass out below the G2 is
he's
like
just
your
got
hand.
that big webbed out, big
he's
heavy
got that little
horns.
drop nub. That's
almost
cool.
palmated in that midsection there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's just a cool deer.
You doing much pounding around up in New Hampshire anymore or not as much?
Not as much, but I'm gonna chase snow in New Hampshire. I'm gonna go up and try to track a buck in New Hampshire, either White Mountains or go all the way up. But
nice.
Yeah. I gotta hunt the White Mountains. That's kind of like on the bucket list, is to kill a buck in the White Mountains.
You've been killing bucks in New Hampshire before, though, right? Some of your old videos, was it more southern New Hampshire?
I've killed them with a video camera.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I videoed like a 160 buck we killed with a bow, and then upper 130s buck we killed with a gun.
Wow.
In New Hampshire.
Was that the boat one where you guys went in on a canoe?
Yeah, canoe.
That's
cool.
The drop time.
Yeah, he had 2 drop tines. He broke one of them off. Yeah, that was a cool buck.
That's really cool.
That's cool.
And I think that one with the bow is still, I think that's still one of the best ones shot on with a bow in New Hampshire.
160?
On camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Doesn't get much better than that.
No, it was cool.
Yeah, I mean, you'll get one if you
and
go up
that's
in the
like
White Mountains.
that was a 6.5-year-old buck. I'm pretty sure.
6.5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That seems to be like the magic age. You know, when they get over that, then it's a miracle.
Yep. New Hampshire's got some crazy rack genetics too. In the last few years, you're seeing. I mean, even before that, New Hampshire's got them for sure.
They got some phenomenal feed too. They usually have a bumper crop of acorns.
Oh yeah.
But they were lacking in acorns quite a bit this year.
Yeah, I only found one area in where I was hunting in the White Mountains that had some acorns. It was like a strip of 10, 15 trees, and that was it.
And then they're gone. Yep. They're gone like instantly.
Yep.
Deer hoover them right up.
Yep.
You got deer, bear. They're pounding them.
A lot of moose kicking around the White Mountains now too, or from what I've seen. I mean, I'm sure they've been around for a while. People probably know that, but like I saw a lot more moose in the White Mountains of New Hampshire this year than I did in Maine.
Yeah, they're hardly giving out any tags.
Yeah.
So that's the way it should be. It should be low tags for those moose, and then it's a once in a lifetime tag when you get it, and it's a phenomenal hunt. That's.
Yeah.
I'd rather see the quality there than not. I know they don't like people hitting them with cars, but I like seeing bull moose are cool as hell. It's cool to have some big bulls running around.
Oh, it's pretty crazy having them close range.
Yeah, they're so much fun. They're so much fun to call in. They're so much fun.
You've been doing that for a while back when Vermont was doing permits. You were guiding a lot of hunters and like that southern Vermont moose too, which is kind of down where your area. That's impressive that you were killing big bulls down here.
Yeah.
And you said there still is. Like you just did a shed hunt trip. We talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. I had some guys. They heard actually me on a podcast and. Talking about shed hunting and stuff, and they've always wanted to come to the Northeast and find moose sheds. So they were from Iowa, and another guy was from Illinois. And there's 3 of them total, 2 of them from Iowa. But no, we found a hell of a bull this spring. I mean, probably mid-50s, I would say. Real big wide palms on him.
Wicked character too.
Yeah, he had really cool inline points in his palm on his right side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You find most of those, they like hang up on the tops as far as, I've never done moose shed hunting. So they just hang up high or do they in the cuts and stuff?
Yeah, high elevation. Those bulls down in the southern part here, they're around fur. You gotta find balsam.
Gotcha.
So they're around like that rabbit cover where you'd go hunt snowshoe hare.
They just live all
high elevation. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
It just really seemed like they concentrate on that softwood browse.
That's what they need. Yeah. I see up in Maine, like when I'm up hunting up there and you get up on those tops, it's like they live up there year round. It's just like you can't walk,
especially the bulls.
Step. Yeah.
It's that hobble there, moose hobble. They just
that and that thick green stuff. They just got trails through it on the tops of those mountains. Pretty cool. But that gets people are shed hunting up there wicked nice. This spring I've never seen so many shed hunt pictures of people getting moose sheds up there, which is awesome.
And they rub a lot when they get into where they're going to shed. Like that's a key thing. You got to find those winter rubs.
Gotcha.
Like you getting in there and you'll see where they're rubbing all that softwood and stuff. That's
tearing them up.
If there's no rubs, it's like I know down here in the southern part, the northern part, it can be a little different. But down in the southern part, I'll get into where there's softwood and balsam and stuff, and if I'm not seeing rubs, it's probably all cows.
Really? Yeah. So they'll start rubbing before they drop.
Oh yeah.
That's how. Okay.
Some people believe they rub so they will drop.
Just to shake them off.
Yeah,
they're
just getting sick
tired
of them. Either that, or they're just getting sick of staring at that other bull. And they're bored, and they're just I don't know. But you can see like some of those winter rubs, they've worked them over and over and over again.
Just trying to. Yeah. I mean, I get that.
I found a shed right at the base of them. So
really?
Sometimes they fall off while they're rubbing.
That's interesting.
But you got to have those rubs around. It seems like when I get into that balsam and then I start finding rubs, it's like keep your eyes peeled. Boom, I'll find a shed.
Yeah. Cool.
They're right there. They don't travel far. A lot of times you'll see where those bulls are only going. They won't travel more than an area the size of a football field all winter.
So they pick their area and that's it.
They just hang out right there and just
what are they nipping, like moss and
all that balsam
greens? They just eat it.
You'll look at those young balsam trees and it looks like you got after it with a weed whacker.
Yeah.
It'll just be the main trunk and everything green is gone off of it.
Just eating them up.
Yeah. I don't know if it's the most easily digestible food for them in the winter or what, but it might have the most calories. I don't know.
It's gonna be a long winter eating that shit.
Yeah, I would think they're a rugged
incredible animal.
They're just a tough, grisly old thing.
It kills me to see the pictures people are posting right now, just the tick loads on them and stuff. Yeah. But at least it's starting to warm up, so they got a chance to put some feed on and survive a little bit. But those ticks are getting them. Hopefully.
We were up north this weekend, and we found a spot where a cow gave birth to a calf, and we didn't walk much more than 100 yards past that, and we saw the cow and the calf. No. Right there.
Alive or dead?
Oh, yeah, alive.
Alive,
yeah,
okay,
he was running, or he was right on Mama's heels walking down off the mountain.
So you're just within that last couple
days?
Yeah,
it was just he was brand new.
That's
I would
awesome.
say like that day or the day before.
Really?
Yeah. He was right.
Wow.
Yeah,
how'd Mom look? She eating up or not too bad?
No, she was super healthy. Yeah. I have not seen that tick issue, but I haven't gone up north all that much. But I've never found one down south here, knock on wood, that's loaded with ticks. Walking into all the moose yards that I've walked into, I have not found those dead ticks or seen a bed full of smashed ticks and blood and everything. I have not seen that down south. Is it just any of the moose that I'm seeing are super healthy?
Interesting.
Is it like a density issue, you think? Like,
that's what the state of Vermont is saying. That's why they're giving out more tags this year. I think the moose are super healthy in the state. Yep. I mean, that northern part of Vermont is... That northern part of Vermont, if you can draw that archery tag, that's a hunt of a lifetime. Yeah.
They just killed the record. Didn't they just kill the record bull this past year?
As far as weight.
Weight, yes. Yep. Yeah, it was like over 1,000, which that's
it was a big
incredible.
Bull. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that last week of September, first week of October, it's unbelievable. I mean, a couple of years ago, I had guided a guy, but it was the gun season. But I went up there the very end of September, and I think I heard like 7 different bulls that one morning. It was like a perfect frosty morning, and they were just, I'd walk into a cut and call, and I could hear a bull answer me. I'm like, all right, just got out of there. Went to another cut, heard another one. There were just bulls everywhere. They were super responsive. There's a lot of bulls up there.
Well, hopefully come back then. Because I remember the golden days of, I drew a moose tag when I think I was like 10.
Yeah.
But that's when they were giving a shitload of them out.
Yeah.
And hopefully one day we'll get back to those golden days of moose, and that'd be awesome. I just don't see as much. Maybe it's just me, but like up north and up in Maine and Pittsburgh and all that way, I get covered in winter tick just walking around and stuff.
Yeah.
Versus Vermont and more southern, I never have any winter tick. Like like the balls of like the red ones you go through that are just crawling all over you. I never seem to get into them down this way.
Yeah. I get into them if I get into the deer yards. I'll get deer ticks on me.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
But just the winter tick load of just the balls, I'd seem like up Maine, I see a lot of them, but down this way, but not much.
Yeah, it's bound to be worse where there's more moose.
Yeah, makes sense.
The density's got to have something to do with it.
But. Well, what else you got for big plans for this season? What's it looking like? I know you've been busy shed hunting and all that stuff, but what's the plan?
I drew a general Montana elk tag.
Okay.
So I'm going to Montana bow hunting elk.
Nice.
Hopefully, don't have to shoot a grizzly bear.
Because have the sidearm on you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You bet.
Yeah.
Are the grizzlies dense up there?
It's bad.
Yeah. Real bad?
Yeah. We haven't had to physically deal with one, but it's only a matter of when. It's not if.
Really? You're always just kind of bumping into them and stuff?
Yeah. You're always running into the sign, the tracks, and then you're running into locals, and they're telling you stories. It's sketchy, but it's phenomenal elk hunting. So.
Yep.
You got to take the good with the bad.
Yeah. That'd be cool.
It deters a lot of people. A lot of people don't like walking far off the hiking trails. They don't like walking more than a mile or two. And the ironic part is most of the grizzlies are right there by the camping areas.
Oh, okay.
They're around all the people, anyway, leaving garbage or anything.
So same as like black bears up here getting in dumpsters and shit?
Yeah, just they're more likely to kill you.
Yep.
That's all.
Yeah. No mercy with those ones.
Yeah. They kill you. Yeah.
That would not be fun. So you get the bear spray and the sidearm going?
Yeah, I got a modified Glock 10 mil. Yeah. That's my bear spray. Yeah, I know that's going to go off. I'm not trusting that can of season. All I'm going to be is seasoned.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Too many stories.
If the wind's wrong, you're not.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I'm walking with the wind in my face.
Yep.
I'm moving on an elk or something. I got the wind in my face. I mean, I've sprayed people with that stuff before.
Sorry, buddy.
You're going to be in rough shape. Yep. Like, I want to be on top of it and being able to see my sights. I don't want to be fighting through ghost pepper spray or whatever the hell that stuff is in there.
So you got the Montana elk, then coming back here.
Then coming back, I'm going to try to kill that buck. I'm going to go to Jersey, hunt some public land down there.
Nice.
Yep.
I got to go down there and do some spring scouting this year, so
yep.
That was crucial.
You said you're on some big Vermont buck too around here.
Yeah. Yep. There's a couple really good ones that are on my radar. I'm just hoping they're all still alive, which they should be. All the deer had a really good winter. Mm-hmm. All the deer are super healthy that I'm seeing. So
seems to be.
But I won't worry about the Vermont bucks until we get I won't hunt them until we get tracking snow. I'll put some cameras out and make sure they're alive and see where they're at. And I know where they're going to be during the rut, and I know where they're going to be post rut. So I'll kill those deer if we get tracking snow.
Yep. So this is how you've been hunting for like the last few years around Vermont, right?
Yeah, and you only got one tag in Vermont, so you got one buck tag. Yeah. So it's like I don't want to burn it unless it's on one of them.
I agree.
Yeah. So
it is hard to go out and bow hunt in Vermont.
Yeah.
With that one tag. I mean, I love hunting Vermont.
Yeah, if I bow hunt Vermont, I'm trying to kill a bear or something.
Yep.
Or a doe.
Fill the freezer with a doe.
Shoot one doe and then try to kill a good bear and then wait for tracking snow to kill a good buck.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I mean, we've been at it for a while. Time flies, but I guess we can wrap it up. You got anything else? Questions for you, Raz?
I was curious when you were talking earlier about the Western hunting. How many states have you hunted now, like total?
Oh, that's a good question. Jeez, I don't know. All of them. All of them.
Yeah, I've hunted Alaska, Colorado,
that's two.
Idaho, Montana, Nebraska, South Dakota. Then go down into Ohio, Indiana, Texas, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts.
You got to get one of the. You got
a bunch of them.
Yeah. And start marking them up.
Yeah.
It's almost 20.
Yeah, quite a few.
That's awesome.
I got to get back to Alaska. Cool. That was a lot of fun. A buddy of mine's got a Alaska. He's going to Alaska on a moose hunt this year, so we're all like
that looks so. I
living
love
vicariously through him
videos.
on it. We're hoping he shoots a giant bull. You know,
seems so cool.
Yeah, it's the most beautiful country. I flew into Fairbanks, and then we drove the entire Dalton Highway all the way north to Dead Horse.
Holy shit!
And that's like 400 and some odd miles of dirt road through some of the most beautiful country. You're going through all moose country, and then you go up through Adigan Pass. And when you're going through Adigan Pass, you get above timberline. And it'll be like the end of August, and all of a sudden it's just white out snow on the ground everywhere.
In August?
Yeah, and you're getting up real high elevation. We're seeing doll sheep on the side of the road and stuff. And we're pitching down the other side, and it's turning into tundra, but you're pitching down. It's still mountains and snow and everything. And we could see, I was just like, hey, stop the truck. I can see blood like all over the side of the hill, like 200 or 300 yards away. And we're looking up there, and it's a big blood spot in the snow. And I'm looking with the binoculars. Pretty soon a wolf stands up.
Oh.
And I'm like, and then I'm looking in the snow, and I can see the curl of a horn. I'm like, there's a wolf on a doll sheep right there.
Holy shit.
That's wild. Like right off the road, but it's a dirt road in the middle of nowhere.
The last frontier up there.
So I'm like, that's cool as shit. Like there's a wolf right there over a doll sheep. And then pretty soon another wolf stands up back, but that one was totally white, but it had like a blood apron on its fur. And that was like the only way you could spot it on the snow. You know, it's like, that's cool. And we get all the way up to Dead Horse, and we were telling the people about it, and they're, going through Adigan and how we saw the doll sheep and the wolves on it. And they're like, was it a normal color, like a gray and black, and then a white one? Like, yeah, actually it was. Like, those wolves have been there for years. People see that pair all the time there. They just pound, on those doll sheep.
No shit.
So and then you're dropping down out of Adigan Pass, you get into the tundra, and it's all you see musk oxen everywhere and caribou and stuff, and it's all public, and it's all bow hunting from there on out within 5 miles of the highway, either side of the highway.
5 miles on the highway is bow hunting
either
only?
Side, bow hunting only.
Really?
But you can shoot a gun past that 5 mile mark.
Interesting.
Because of the pipeline.
Okay.
Oh, okay. They don't
You're
want
driving right along the pipeline the whole way.
That's the reason the road's there, right?
Yep. But it's cool. I mean, there's a bunch of hunts on YouTube. You can see where people are hunting caribou up there off the Hall Road. They call it the Hall Road, the Dalton Highway, Alaskan Highway, whatever.
Yeah.
But beautiful country. We went all the way up to Dead Horse, and then we hired a guy for like $500 in an airboat, and he drove us up the Ivashack River like 30 miles and dumped us off. And then we hunted for 10 days, and we had our own rafts. We blew up those rafts and then drifted out.
That's great.
And it was fun. I caught like 100 grayling on a fly rod.
Just everywhere, all over the place.
Oh, my God. The rivers are just like full of grayling. We were hoping to catch some Arctic char, but we only caught one the whole trip. But we caught a pile. I mean, I was catching grayling up to like 3 or 4 or 5 pounds. Just beauties. And I shot a really nice caribou bull. And wolves howling outside the tent like every night.
Is that your picture? Is that the caribou?
Yeah, that's the caribou. That's silhouette.
I've
got that as my profile picture.
Yeah, that's an awesome picture.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because it was really weird. Like the sun would come up and it just goes parallel with the horizon.
Yeah. You said that's August?
Yeah, so very end of August. Yeah, it was like never dark.
Just light all.
It was like always kind of light, and it was like that really cool light in the sunrise. It was like bright red and everything. I'm like, oh my God, that's a phenomenal picture. And I got the camera all set up, and then I stood in front of it, and I was like, just push the button, somebody. It's like one of my favorite pictures.
Sportsman's paradise up there.
But it's it's attainable. It's all public land. It's just getting there, and then getting everything back is expensive.
You gotta want to do it too. Yeah, that's a different type.
But if you can get a couple guys into it, you can fly up there to Fairbanks and then rent a vehicle and drive that highway and bow hunt caribou.
You ever had interest in doing a sheep hunt?
Oh, I'd love to.
That seems like the coolest thing to do.
It's just like $25,000.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to. I mean, that's the one sheep species I'd love to hunt. But.
Yep. That's on my bucket list one day. Get up there and do that. Just seems like the ultimate thing to do.
Yep. But 100%.
One day.
Alaska's wild though. Everybody should go see it.
Yeah.
It's just for the fishing alone, the fishing and the scenery.
Just every stream up there is full of fish.
It's just there's grayling everywhere. And then you get into that southern part of Alaska, and there's, I don't know how many different salmon species. Yep. You can go out on a boat and catch a big halibut. See some orcas swimming around. And I'd like to go up there and shoot some blacktail. I've never shot a blacktail.
That seems cool, yeah. Down in those like southern, like island-ish
area. Kodiak Island and stuff.
Yep. Yeah, that seems like a cool hunt. It's thicker than hell, but then they just pop up near you.
Super steep. You get down there early season, they're up above timberline. Then late season, they're right by the coast.
And you like call those things in too, don't you? I feel like I've seen on like
I've seen a bunch of videos
and they come running in.
Yeah, decoying them.
Yeah,
you can decoy them really good. Yeah, and they're supposedly like the best tasting venison on the planet. Yeah.
No kidding. Well, I'll have to add that one to the list too then.
Yeah, it's a good combo. You wouldn't starve in Alaska. There's tons of food everywhere. There's great fishing, great hunting.
Huh.
There's a lot of stuff to do, man. Everyone's got to do those adventures.
Got to live. Yeah, do it while you're able.
Absolutely.
Huh. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up there. That's a good way to put an exclamation point on it. We appreciate you doing this. And as always, we'll put your social media links in the description below. And I'm sure there'll be a bunch of videos and pictures coming from you this season. You got a lot on your plate, so looking forward to seeing that.
You got to see that buck.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll, I'll be down there at the Woodsman Arms booth at Huntstock, so we'll see everybody down there.
Yep, that'll be a good time.
Yeah,
sweet.
Good time, man.
All righty. Well, we'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks again, Jeremy.
No problem, man.
See ya.
Come meet and learn from the best trackers in the world this summer at Huntstock, America's reinvented hunting show. August 11th through the 13th at Wildwood Farm in Westminster, Massachusetts, you can expect 3 days of celebrating hunting, meeting and learning from legendary hunters, winning prizes from our over $30,000 worth of giveaways, and having the best time you've ever had at a hunting show. For trackers and fans of the Benoit family, we're happy to announce that Woodman Arms has partnered with the Benoits to reproduce their legendary DVD series by popular demand. They're finally coming out, and they'll be available for the first time at Huntstock this summer. They're likely to sell out at Huntstock, so make sure you get your tickets to Huntstock so you can get your hands on them before they're gone. If they don't sell out, they'll be available online at woodmanarms.com. With trackers at Huntstock like Lanny Benoit and Timmy Bolduc, Hal Blood, Rick Labby, and the whole Big Woods Bucks team, Joe Donito, Jim Massett, Steve Grabowski from the Adirondack Trackers, Rodney Elmer and Mountain Deer, Joey Davis and his great team at Northwoods Whitetails, Adam Lamson, his team at STAGR. There's not a better show in the world for deer trackers. With 50-plus hours of seminars and live podcast programming on multiple stages and gear built for trackers on display and for sale, and over 80 sponsors from the hunting world, you do not want to miss this show. You can get your tickets at www.huntstockevents.com, HUNTSTOCK events.com today, and use code STAGR at checkout for 10% off. That's STAGR at checkout for 10% off, and all who use the code STAGR will be entered to win one of 5 special Benoit DVDs that will feature a never-before-seen interview with Lanny Benoit that won't be published to the public. So Woodman Arms is reproducing all the legendary DVDs, and 5 of them will have a special Lanny Benoit interview, and we'll make those drawings at Huntstock. But you have to buy your tickets using code STAGR to get entered into that. So, once again, get your tickets at www.huntstockevents.com. Use code STAGR for 10% off and to be entered into the raffle. And we'll see you at Huntstock.